James chapter 3. And we'll be looking at verses 2 through 10. And I'm not going to read them now. We're going to read them as we go through, but I just need you to get there so you can take your seat. Take your seat. As I stated when we stood, the Lord began to deal with me concerning the year 2020. And 2020, if you go to the doctor, we know that 2020 is synonymous with vision, with having perfect sight, with being able to see. And one of the things the Lord began to show me and reveal to me is that going into this new year, we're in the 8th month, which is new beginnings. And so now we have to start preparing ourselves now so that we can see clearly what the Lord wants to do with us, through us, and for us. But in order for us to grab hold of the vision for 2020, in order for us to really grab hold to what it is that the Lord really wants to do, he said there are some things you must now start working on so that when you get there, they don't trip you up. Okay, and I hope you got your feel good in now, because this is going to be a little tight, but it's right. Because one of the things that he began to show me and that he began to reveal to me, he said, son, one of the issues that the body has is they talk too much. Deacon Pete, I hope you're praying. He said one of the problems is that it's our tongue that gets us in trouble. There was a song not too long ago by some guys that simply said, you talk too much and you never shut up. And the whole basis and premise for that song was that there is always somebody that is talking without the benefit of intellect. They talk with callous and they are using words in an uncareful manner. They don't care what they say, and they don't care who they say it to. They tell everybody, I just got to give them a piece of my mind. I've got to tell them what I'm thinking, and that's really what the Lord began to show me. He says, son, that's part of the problem, and we're going to look at it here in James, and that's part of the problem is because, Sister Peggy, you giving them a piece of your mind, so everything you give them is based on what you think. Okay. Everything you say is based on how you feel. It's not wrapped up in what it is that God has said. And when was the last time you opened up your mouth to start sharing with thus saith the Lord, absent your opinion? Oh, you might as well get with me, because I'm going to preach it till I'm through. And I want you to understand that if we're going to see clearly in this upcoming year, one of the things we've got to do is change what we say. We've got to become more mindful, Deacon DeBerry, of how we engage those around us. And I've come to learn that the reason the church is not full is not because of the folk on the outside. Outsiders are not the issue why churches are not growing. Churches are not growing because the folk sitting in the pews don't say the right stuff. We ain't talking God kind of talk. We ain't talking love kind of talk. And it's impossible to say how much you love God and still dog your brother. God help me. It's impossible to come in here and lift your hands. It's impossible to come in here and clap and jump and shout, and you still can't talk to one another. So James chapter 3, looking at verses 2 through 10, James starts off by saying, for we all stumble in many ways. In other words, everybody got an issue. He said we all stumble. Everybody got something. But then he says, and if anyone, I'm reading from the English Standard Version, he says, and if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he's a perfect man and able to bridle his whole body. Now, bridle means control. He says, if they don't stumble in what they say, then they're perfect and they're able to bridle, they're able to control their whole body, which then leads me to understand that it's really my mouth that controls me. And if we can get this mouth under control, then we can control our whole body. Jesus, if we can get how we talk, if we can get how we feel under control when we engage other people, he says, then you can control your body. But here's what I've come to understand, and that is many of us, while striving for perfection, must come to the realization that we're really not perfect because we don't control what we say. You ever get to the place where you feel like you just gotta say it? I just got to tell them what I think. No, you ain't got to do it.
Help us.
You just want to do it. Because in doing it makes you feel better, but oftentimes it does not build up the very person you're doing it to. When was the last time your words encouraged and pushed somebody closer to Christ? When was the last time your words encouraged somebody to come to church? When was the last time your words encouraged somebody to pray a little longer? When was the last time your words encouraged somebody to strive just a little bit harder? When was the last time your words encouraged somebody to be faithful in their giving and faithful in their service? When was the last time you told them, listen, if you do it God's way, it's going to always work for you? What are you saying? James here in chapter 3 is really outlining for us how often the tongue will mess us up. And truth be told, the reason many of us struggle the way we struggle is because we talking. My God. If you stop talking, you won't struggle so much. Okay, you're looking at me funny. Let me prove my case. Verse 3 says, and if we put bits in the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. Y'all know what a bit is? The bit is that thing that's on the harness that goes over the horse's face, and it goes in his mouth, and it goes all the way back to the back of his teeth, and it holds and suppresses the tongue. And in suppressing the tongue, now the horse is in control of the rider. The horse only goes where the rider wills it to go. If the rider pulls him to the left, the horse goes left. If the rider pulls to the right, he goes right. But it's all based upon the bit being firmly in their mouth, and the horse understands at this point, I'm no longer in control. So my question, then, beloved, is what bits in your mouth? What bits in your mouth? Because based on what's in your mouth and based on how it's pulled, it's going to determine how you turn. And then if you really want to know what's controlling the person, watch what's in their mouth. Watch what's in their mouth, and when that thing is poured on, see which way they turn. See how they buck up against you. See how they kick back every now and then. What's in your mouth? Who's really controlling you? Who's really prompting you to speak? Who's really the one whose for wisdom you go after? Who's really leading you? Because you have to understand that although the bit is in there to keep and ensure control and movement, but understand where the head goes, so does the body. Yes. Help today. And I've come to tell you that many believers, Brother D-Berry, in the church, we are really double jointed. And while people think being double jointed is cool, it really looks nasty. Oh, you don't believe me? You don't believe me? You ever saw somebody who was double jointed, who was able to twist their thumb back, and you're like, oh, that's cool, but that looks nasty. Why? Why does it look nasty? Because it's out of place. It's not looking like it's supposed to look. It's not functioning the way it needs to function. Although it's still attached, it's still not serving its proper function. It's still not doing the job that it was designed to do. And I've come to tell you that because we got so many bits in our mouth and we start talking with all type of malice and guile and hatred and frustration and envying and strife, it's causing the body to look like a group of believers that are double jointed. And so when people look at us, they say, yeah, that's the church, but it looks nasty. Because we have a lot of people who are in church, but they out of place. They're a part of the body, but they ain't functioning. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I've come to tell you the reason many of us are not doing what we're supposed to be doing is because we're not watching our mouth. My God. We are more concerned about what other people have to say, and we're less concerned about what God says. We are good in regurgitating gossip, but we're poor at the Romans road to salvation. We're good at regurgitating the latest frustration, but we are poor at regurgitating love and confidence. We're bad at telling people, listen here, all you've got to do is make up in your mind you're going to stop talking according to how you feel. Now, I ain't saying you can't have feelings, but you can't say everything you feel. Okay. You're looking at me funny, You ever had an instance, Sister Tasha, where people say, "Whew, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that." Can I help you? They said exactly what they meant. Right. You ain't got to clap. I know I'm telling the truth. And even in the spirit of anger and hostility that they said it in, they meant that too. They oftentimes may only be sorry for the time in which it came out. Right. Because truthfully, you don't say what ain't been in you for a long time. You ain't just up now, you want to be a rebel rouser. No, it's always been in you, but sometimes you've always had the right kind of people around you to keep the right bit in your mouth so you ain't saying the wrong stuff. And when you get around people who allow you to just say what you want to say with no accountability, then that's when you start getting in trouble. And I've come to tell you in 2020, God's going to start revealing to you who needs to be in your space, who can help hold you accountable. Because what he wants to release for you, what he wants to reveal to you, you can't get it with the way you currently are. My God. Preach, boy, I'm going to do the best I can. You have to realize that what you say really does matter. And too often in the body of Christ, we as believers, we're saying a lot of stuff, but we killing a lot of people. You don't believe me. You don't believe me. Let me go on and work through this here real quick. Watch this. Watch this. In verse 6, he says, and the tongue is a fire. He called it a world of unrighteousness, meaning that honestly nothing good comes out of your mouth if your tongue ain't bridled by Christ. Y'all don't believe me? He says it's a fire. So really, you don't need nothing to get you going. It's already there kindling. All you need is an opportunity, and for someone not to hold you accountable, that's going to encourage you to engage in unrighteousness. Am I in the text? Watch this. He said, the tongue is set among our members, staining the whole body. In other words, your tongue will cause the entire body to look bad. You ever see people digging deep berry? You sell, you using customer service. So when they come in, they look good as a potential client. Man, they dress, boy. I mean, you looking at yourself like, oh yeah, that's gonna be a good one. And then you start engaging with them. And as soon as they open their mouth and start talking, you realize that what they present and what they're able to deliver are two different things. Yes, sir. Everything was good till they start talking. Oh, okay, you ain't in customer service. None of y'all may work in customer service, so let me give it to you like this. You ever seen that woman? She looked good at first glance. I'm coming for you, Barnett. Then you start talking to her, and you realize she's prettier than she is smart. You ever seen that brother working out? He looks good, chiseled and disciplined, until that joker start talking. Then you realize he's dumb as a box of rocks. And so his conversation makes the whole package look bad. James in verse 6 is saying that's what's happening in the body of Christ. You look good till you start talking. Once you start talking, you make the whole church look bad. Listen what he says. He says, listen, watch this. He says, setting on fire the entire course of life and set on fire by hell. Wait a minute. Not only is the church looking bad, but when you open up your mouth to talk, you start talking all this hellish stuff. And he said, because you're talking all this hellish stuff, it sets the entire course of your life on a one-way track to hell. What are you saying? I'm trying to get you to understand. I need you to get this in your spirit, that if you're going to embrace what God has for you in this upcoming year, you've got to change your hellish conversation. What are you talking about? Whose words are you regurgitating? when you sit down to recount your day and you talk about your experience with the believers, you talk about your encounter with the household of faith, is your word set on the course for hell? God, watch this. He says, what you say will fix the course of your life. But if you are going to clearly see the vision and direction for God for your life, you must watch your mouth. Because if you are not careful, it will become clear that hell controls your tongue. And if hell controls your tongue, then that means it is the devil who controls what you say. Who's controlling you? When you get frustrated and you start talking, do you measure twice and cut once, or do you just go off of the first thing smoking? I just got to get it out. No, you can't always just get it out. Sometimes you need to take a step back and say, Lord, I need you to bridle my tongue. I need you to help me keep my composure. I need you to help me keep myself under control, because I don't want to say the wrong thing, because if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to bring shame to the kingdom, and I don't want to be responsible. Help me, God, for bringing shame to your kingdom. I don't want to be the reason that somebody has left the faith. God, bridle my tongue. Look at verse 7. Look at verse 7. This got me, Elder John. He says, every animal can be and has been tamed. That's the book. Y'all see it? Not only has it been tamed, Deacon Pete, but then James says, Barnett, that it's been tamed by mankind. So, you mean to tell me that mankind is so gifted that it can tame a ferocious lion? Mankind is so gifted, he can tame a tiger. Mankind is so gifted, he can train a dolphin.
Yes, sir.
Mankind is so gifted, he can tell an elephant when to rise up on his hind legs and when to put them down. Tell him connect with the one in front of you or disconnect from the one in front of you. He says every animal can be tamed that has been tamed, and it was tamed by man. But verse 8 becomes the conclusion of the matter. For everybody that think you are in control, I come to tell you, you're really not. Because verse 8 says, but no man can tame the tongue. Now, verse 7 just talked about man's ability to tame things that would otherwise seem untamable. Verse 8, Deacon DeBerry, the very thing that I'm really only responsible for in my mouth, he tells me that's the one thing I can't control. I can control what didn't come from me. But in verse 8, I can't control what comes from me. Jesus, y'all looking at me funny. And he says, you can't control, and I've come to understand, we cannot control what we like giving into. Okay, y'all looking at me real funny. You can't control what you label as just speaking your mind. You can't control what you don't see as a problem. And I want you to understand that it is not in your wheelhouse to control your tongue, because if it's up to you as to what bit is going to be put in your mouth, I want you to understand you ain't going to put no bit in your mouth. No horse wants the bit in their mouth, but the horse understands that I am yielded to the will of my master, to the one that controls me. And I want you to understand that if God is not allowed to put the bit in your mouth, then God is not the one who controls you. You ain't got to tell that man how you feel. The relationship over. Move on. There ain't no point in you sending them nice, nasty emails. Baby, it's done. Move on.
Yes, sir.
I ain't serving in that ministry no more. I don't like how they talk to me, but how you talk to them. He says, this one area in your life you cannot control on your own. And the crazy thing is, Sister Peggy, it is the smallest member. It's the smallest one. And you ever heard folks say, I'm scared because of what they said? Ain't got nothing to do with what they done. We get tripped up over what people say. Why? Because he told us that this tongue sparks a fire. Hold on, I ain't got there yet. I'm going though. I'm going. Watch this. Verse 8 again. No man can tame the tongue. He says it is a restless evil. When something is restless, it means it does not stop. And if God is not controlling what you say, then everything about you coming out of your mouth will be continuous evil. I want you to know you are in control of what God is going to release for you in 2020. But it's based on what you start saying. Or better yet, it's based on what you stop saying. Because some of us, it ain't what we have said, is what we've been saying. That's really getting us in trouble. I've come to tell you that if you keep speaking it, you're bound to get it. If you keep saying, don't nobody like me, eventually ain't nobody gonna like you.
Well. Come on now.
You keep saying they can't stand you, eventually they can't stand you. Don't nobody love me, eventually won't nobody love you. What are you saying? Because you have to understand that what you say goes into the earth. And once it goes into the earth, every time you spew more frustration and hate and resentment and anger and malice or whatever it is that you're speaking, every time you release more doubt and more unbelief, you are watering that very seed that you planted. And at some point, that seed that you planted has got to come up and yield the very fruit of the ground you've been planting it in. So you're only getting what you say. When I go feed my grandbaby, she don't spit up nothing I didn't feed her. Wow. So when she spits up, I'm not surprised because I know what she had. Why are you surprised when life starts spitting up at you? Have you forgotten what you fed it? Have you forgotten what you've been saying? You're only reaping what you've been sowing. Truthfully, I had to learn, Alton, ain't nobody against you, but if you keep saying they are, then they will be. God, I get myself free if you don't mind. He says, it is full of deadly poison. When you open your mouth, if God does not have control of your tongue, then you will release a poison that will kill everything and everyone that surrounds you when you open your mouth. And your carelessness with your tongue will cause you to rest in hell and miss what God has for you. Now, I ain't sending nobody to hell, but James already told us that the tongue is already set on the course for hell. And if you don't allow God to control your speech and control your temperament, then you're going to set yourself on that same course. Watch this. I got to go. I got 4 minutes. He says, verse 9, he says, with it, we bless our Lord and Father. And with it, we curse people who are made in the likeness of God. Wait a minute. Wait, hold on. We bless God with our tongue. But then we turn around and curse God's people with our tongue. We bless God with our tongue. Then we turn around and curse God's people with our tongue. We bless God with our tongue. Then we turn around and curse God's people with our tongue. You get it? Okay, so if we bless God with our tongue, but we turn around and curse God's people with our tongue, can I tell you what's happening? I'm glad you asked me. You really cursing God. Let me make it a little bit more natural for you. You can't love my wife and hate me. You can't praise what comes from me and then curse me for releasing it. He says, with our tongue, we bless our God. We come in here and we put on that real good show. Lord, I love you. Lord, I lift your name on high. God, there is none above you in all the earth. I am the righteousness of God. I am the head and not the tail. We got all that stuff down. And as soon as things is over, we start talking about, girl, I can't stand you.
Lord Jesus.
You cannot praise the giver and despise his gift.
Come on.
You want God's riches in 2020? You want to see things clear in 2020? Get this in your spirit. You ain't going to get it without me. And truth is, I ain't going to get it without you. So what are you saying? What are you saying? That means now, not only must I praise God with my tongue, but I must bless you with my tongue. Jesus, we got to learn how to speak life into one another. We got to learn how to speak encouragement to one another. Look at verse 10 and I'm through. Verse 10 says, from the same mouth, come blessings and cursings. He said, my brothers, these things ought not be so. It ought not be so common that every time we talk, he only tearing somebody down.
My God.
It ought not be so common that every time we engage, it is always about what somebody ain't doing. It ought not be that whenever we talk, every time we get together, it's just to drag somebody else's name through the mud. He said, brothers, these things ought not be. He didn't say you would always like one another. He didn't say you would always get along with one another. He didn't say that you was going to always be at peace with one another. He just said you ought not be dogging one another. He didn't say you couldn't have disagreements, but he says you ought not be disagreeable. He didn't say that you didn't have to always be patting me on the back, but he did say you ought not always be pointing out my shortcomings and my downfalls. When was the last time you start praying for the very one you talking about? When was the last time you start lifting up the very one you said wasn't no good? Because I got news for you. With your saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Ghost, with the mighty burning fire self, the same way you talk about some are talking about you.
Yes, sir.
The reality, my time is up. The reality is we've got to start preparing now for where God's taking us in a few months. And I come to tell you that because you've been speaking evil for so long, this ain't gonna be no overnight fix. You've become so comfortable being damnable, it ain't gonna change overnight. And so that's why he's telling us that these things, how we're engaging, what we're saying, that we have to be mindful of, because the stuff we release out of our mouth, it really should not be happening, because every time we release things out of our mouth that does not glorify God, that does not edify the body, that does not point people to a saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, that does not push them to a place of repentance, then we're setting their life on a course for hell.
That's right. That's right.
So touch your neighbor, say, neighbor, watch your mouth. Watch it. I ain't saying you can't talk, but measure twice and cut once. You know, think about it before you say it, and ask yourself, really, is this godly or is this me? Because if it's me, then it's only gonna set things on fire even more. We need people who know how to smother the flame and not fan the flame. Look at your neighbor, say, neighbors, don't keep it going. Put it out. Smother it. How then, preacher, do I smother it? You smother it by asking God to bridle your tongue. Lord, control my speech. Help me not go in this job and because of my mouth lose it on my first day. Lord, help me not be so comfortable being disrespectful that don't nobody, okay. Bridle your tongue. Based on what you say and how you say it is going to always determine the results of how well and how far you can go. In this upcoming season for your life, God is about to start showing you who's allowed to go and who can't. Stuff is about to be a whole lot clearer for you. The fog is going to start to lift when you close your mouth. Because when your mouth is going, you're not paying attention. If you stop talking, Barnett, then God can start showing you what he wants to show you. But he's not going to fight you for your attention. But if you allow him to put the bit in your mouth, the very people you thought you couldn't stand, you'll realize, no, it wasn't them. My view was off because I had people talking to me and their tongue wasn't bridled, and because their tongue wasn't bridled, I took the bit out of my own mouth, and because I took the bit out of my own mouth, and I started talking like they was talking, and next thing you know, because I was talking like they was talking, I couldn't sleep at night, and I was all frustrated for no reason. I would get up and saying that this is the day the Lord has made, but I was still having attitude throughout the whole day. Why? Because you didn't have the right bit in your mouth. You wasn't saying the right thing, and you didn't have the right people talking in your ear, encouraging you to do the right thing. You've got to learn in this season now for what God's getting ready to do. I can't go in the same way I've been going in. I can't do it the way I've always been doing it. It's time for a change, and your change starts now. And if you don't like it because I'm putting God's bit back in my mouth, if you can't stand it, then stop talking to me, because I refuse to allow you to send me to hell because you get careless conversation. It's time for a change. We cannot engage those on the outside if we don't know how to deal with each other's faults on the inside.
My God.
The folk on the outside been in that thing a long time, so they ain't changing overnight. You've been going to church for 30 years or 40 years, and you still just as reckless now as you was when you first got here. And the only reason you that reckless, because didn't nobody tell you to put the bit back in your mouth. My job today is to tell you, put the bit back in your mouth. Let God control what you say. Because the reality is, you will find if you let God control it, you find yourself doing more praying than talking. My brothers, my sisters, it ought not be. And the doors of the church are open, but it ought not be